Hello, and welcome to the Holographic Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Tone D, and I'm joined by my co-host, Kyle, the salty dog. How's it hanging, Kyle?
A little to the left.
Awesome. That's how we do it. That's how we do it here on the Holographic Podcast. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. This is our third show, and I want to talk a little bit about what we do, what we talk about here. So we talk about a lot of different topics. We talk about a lot of different things. We don't limit ourselves to a certain thing. And so on different podcast sites, right now we're on Podbean and we're on YouTube, and we'll be on more things. We'll be on Spotify and different things. Right now on those sites, we are under society and culture. And a friend of mine asked me, why aren't you on science? Because a lot of the hologram theory and string theory has to do with science. And the reason that we're with society and culture and not science is because I want to relate what we talk about to our society and to our culture. And that's why we do the show. And I think that's very important. And I think it's important to relate different scientific things to culture and to your life specifically, to my life, to Kyle's life, to everyone's life specifically. So that's why we're under that designation and not a scientific designation. And I don't have any PhDs. I mean, I'm well read on science. Kyle's well read on certain sciences. And, you know, we're both fairly educated. We're not scientific doctors. We're not experts in a particular field. We're more of cultural. We're speakers of the culture. So, yes, Kyle.
I was gonna say analysts.
We're analysts. That's right.
You know, like where things meet is where we like to live.
That's exactly right. And so that's what we do on the show is we talk about where things meet. We want to bring a lot of different things together. We want to be generalists and we want to look at a broader perspective. And that's the main theme of the show, is looking at reality from a different perspective, from a deeper perspective. And so that's what we do and that's who we are. And so we're going to talk about a lot of different things. I just wanted to mention that first before we get going. And also before we talk about our first topic, we do have a sponsor. So this particular show is sponsored by Little Bookish Wardrobe. It's a monthly subscription box for children. In the box, the child gets a book and matching costume pieces every month. So if you're a parent and you want your child to read more, or your child is interested in books and has a great imagination, this is a fantastic subscription box for you. It's called Little Bookish Wardrobe. You can search for it, Little Bookish Wardrobe, or find it on littleBookishWardrobe.com. All right, so we're going to talk first about the nature of reality and how we create our reality. So the last couple of shows we talked about hologram theory, and we talked about string theory and different physics theories about the nature of reality. And I think it's a very interesting and pertinent topic, and it shapes a lot of things that I do. So I want to tie those together. So hologram theory, you have an explicit reality and an implicit reality. And string theory, you have these very small strings and mathematics behind it. So I want to bring those together a little bit and talk about the nature of our reality and how we create our own reality. So to start out, I want to ask Kyle a question. Kyle, can you prove to me or show me zero? Show me zero. Kyle, don't draw it. No, prove it to me. Okay, fine. Write it. Write whatever you're going to write.
I mean, I was just going to go.
Yes. Kyle is writing something. And so Kyle has written a circle with a line through it. But that circle with a line through it has so many molecules on it.
And
There's no zero there.
there's a lot of planks in there.
There's a ton of plank lengths in there, Kyle, like
Plank
a lot.
lengths, I know. I don't know, sir. I'm not sure if I can prove zero. I'm not sure if I can show you zero. I don't really know what it is.
So I'm sure there's some mathematicians out there that are like, you fool, just subtract 3 from 3 and you get nothing. 3 minus 3 is 0. Boom.
We all know that.
I've proved 0. But those are just words. Those are just that's just a mathematics on a paper. And yes, you might be proving 0 in mathematics, but you're not showing me 0 in reality. So far, no one has shown me 0 in reality, because there is no 0 in reality, because 0 is a concept that we create with our minds. There's always something. There's the universe, our existence, our reality is made up of things, whatever you want to call those things, whatever theory you think is correct. And that's what we are. We create this reality, and we create these concepts. So we've created 0. Likewise, I would say we create infinity. It's very difficult to prove infinity. And so furthermore, it's extremely difficult to prove right and wrong, good and bad, things like that, even up and down. I mean, on this earth, we have gravity, but in our surrounding solar system, in our surrounding space, there is no up and down. I mean, someone on the bottom of the earth is facing a different way than we are. Are they up? Are we up? And so my point is that we create our own reality. We create these concepts to make our reality smooth, to make our reality make sense. So we're not walking around going, I have no clue what's going on. We make a clue, right? So even though right and wrong are concepts, there's certainly a society or societal expectations. There's certainly a norm and a general expectation of what is right and wrong in our society. We've created that and we accept it. So I don't want to completely challenge right or wrong in society. I'm okay with accepting a certain right or wrong. Are you okay with accepting that right or wrong, Kyle?
I'm not only okay with accepting it, I'm also okay with judging and delivering on right or wrong. Do it every day, all the time.
That's right. And as humans, that's interesting, because as humans, we have evolved to judge. People say like, oh, don't be so judgy. And that's a good concept. We'll talk about it on a different show. But as humans, we've evolved to judge to survive. We have to judge whether to go here or eat this or fight this beast or do something like that. And so we've evolved to judge. So we're judgy. We create judgments. And so that's the reality that we create. My broader point, and the point that I want people to think about, is a more loose, our looser judgments, our looser definitions. And so I'm going to use one, which is our mood. So we create our moods, just like we create our reality. And I bring this up because, working with people and coming in contact with people, especially in the last, this year, 2020, people's moods have been so varied and have been so up and down, and it's been so crazy. And it just seems to me that since we create our reality, why don't we create a better mood and create a better interaction with that reality? And so I know it's difficult. I'm not downplaying when someone has like a poor mood and when unfortunate things happen to you, because that happens to everyone. Happens to me, happens to Kyle. Happens to Kyle a lot, right?
Yeah.
Happens to everybody. So I'm not downplaying the fact that there's unfortunate things that create a poor mood. But that being said, all moods can change. And so you might wake up in the morning and be in a so-called good mood. And then you might hear something. You might hear one thing from another human, or something on the news, or something from anything. You might hear one thing, and all of a sudden your mood changes from good to bad. Now, it wasn't the thing that changes your mood. It's you. It's your brain. It's your mind that changes your mood. So how we perceive reality and how we accept things then creates our own reality of how we accept and change and do things. So there's more scientific things like zero and infinity and up and down the universe around us, but there's basic human things like our moods, good and bad moods, that we can create. So I want to give people a couple tips on how to change your mood, because I've been working on it my whole adult life, and I'm not very successful, but I've been trying. So a couple things to change your mood when you're in a shitty mood, when you're in a bad mood. There's two things that you can try. Number one is to...
What the hell is going on over there?
Shenanigans, Kyle. Shenanigans.
God damn it. I'm in a perfectly fine mood, and then all of a sudden this beeping comes on. Jesus H on a popsicle stick.
All right, Kyle. I'm going to give you two things to concentrate on to change your mood. Number one.
Olives and gin.
Olives and gin. That's not it. Don't listen to that, ladies and gentlemen. That's not how you change your mood. Okay. Mm-hmm. How you change your mood, number one, or to try, something to try, how you change your mood, is to focus on or think about how you are lucky in the fact that you have your health and you're alive, right? And how you're lucky to have what you have. So you have your health and you have your existence. Like you have a home, or you have a car, or you have...
What if you don't have those things?
Right. And that's a good point. And I was going to bring that up. So now if you don't have those things, if you don't have your health, if you don't have a home, if you don't have a car, if you don't have any of those things,
you can just think about Tony and me, who have all those things.
You can just think about Tony and me. Then that's a different situation. But I would argue that at this point, that at this point, most people in this society have their health to a point. Everyone has health issues. And I know, Kyle, you just had a broken arm or broken shoulder. And I went through a really bad break.
I got lots of health issues.
Right.
Man.
And I have lots of health issues. But the thing that I want to say is that it always could be worse. Now, when I broke my arm, I went through a bunch of surgeries. I had a really bad break. And I almost lost my arm, but I didn't. I was lucky. So even though it was a really bad thing, it could have been way worse. Now, you had an accident. Could it have been way worse?
Definitely.
Way worse. Like real bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that when you're in a shitty mood, the thing that you can think about to change your reality is to understand where you are in life, and that it's not so bad, that you're in a fairly decent spot.
I wanted to expound on that for a second. In that ties in with like really, really universal and ancient knowledge that's really easy to forget all the time, especially now when we're constantly being... I'm not going to blame it on the information age, because it was prior to that. It's just easy to lose sight of the things that you have, become annoyed, become frustrated. And a lot of people actually have really, really legitimate reasons to be angry or pissed off. And you and I have legitimate reasons as well. It's all a matter of degree. It's all a matter of perspective. It's all a matter in the way you look at it. But I think that what you're getting at is really, really an important thing to remember, especially now when things are sort of are seemingly as crazy as they've ever been is it's almost like it's almost like being seasickness. Okay, if being seasick, if you're seasick, the best thing to do is actually not to shut your eyes or go below decks. It's to go topside and find a fixed point. So
Look at the horizon.
exactly. So it's like, in a way, what you want to do is if things are really not going your way, and this isn't just a cure-all, fix-all. I mean, some people are really, really hurting, and I'm going to speak for Tony on this one. We're not belittling that and saying like, oh, just Mary Poppins that shit and fucking a spoonful of sugar and all this other nonsense. No. But sometimes it does help to keep those old, ancient ideas in mind, which is find something to focus on. Something where, like Tony was saying, it could be, it's rough, but it could be worse. You have your health. If you don't have your health, you've got somebody by your side. If you don't have a person by your side, maybe you've got a goldfish. I don't know. You got to focus on something. And I find myself retreating into that zone all the time. And actually, I think that's part of why I haven't really been terribly depressed in a long time. I've had health issues. I've had breakups. I've had just sort of scenarios where I'm wondering, like, what in the holy hell am I actually doing? I'm not on the same level as everybody else. I have less money than other people, maybe a little more money than other people. I just got fired, laid off, whatever the case may be. I find that really what helps is to, like Anthony was saying, is to go to a place where you say, okay, you put it in perspective. You know what I mean? And you can realize that it could be worse. And it's not a hard thing to do. Even if it cheers you up for 5 minutes and then you go back down into the rabbit hole, at least you did it for 5 minutes, because if you did it once, you could do it again.
Well, and the thing
and
about
it helped
mood,
me.
yeah, and the thing about mood too is that you fake it till you make it. Like, people are like, oh, you can't fake this or you can't fake that. But when you create your own reality, faking leads to reality. So if, like you said, if it changes your mood for 5 minutes, or if it brings you up from the rabbit hole for a little bit, that's how you get out of that, is that you fake it and you focus on a few things, like, okay, I guess I can focus on this. And lo and behold, in a little while, you get out of that hole, because you're creating your reality. You're faking it and then creating it and making it real. Because as I'm trying to prove or show, is that our moods are created by our own mental state, by our own mind. So even though it's easy to think that, oh, there's all these external things that are doing this to me, no, those external things happen to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
It's your internal mind, it's your internal mood that is creating how you deal with that. So like Kyle said, you deal with diversity. Like when like many years ago, I went through really, really hard times right after I left Vermont, actually, Kyle. I went through some real shitty times, and I created a different reality, because I was like, this isn't going to work. I had to create a new way of looking at things, and I came out on top.
Yeah. It's not diversity, you idiot. It's adversity.
Sorry, sir.
So I just also, and I don't want to take too much time, but another part aspect of what we're talking about is also, and it's directly tied in, is reactivity, right? We're all very reactive beings. I just was on the phone with my father, and he called me last night, and for the umpteenth time, I was like, damn it, Dad, why'd you call me on my cell phone? It hardly works here. I told you to call me on my home phone. I'm paying for it, damn it. And he's like, dude, what do you want me to do? It came up on my screen. It was the number I punched. And then, so, he got off the phone, and I was like, you know what, Kyle? You're a fucking asshole. How dare you talk to your father like that when he didn't deserve it? I mean, there's times that he deserved it. But that was me being completely reactive for no reason, no good reason whatsoever, okay? And reactivity is really something that's not easily modifiable. Let's just say modifiable. It's modifiable. Case in point, and this is something that you might remember. Remember Bucky?
Of course.
Remember the old Buckman? Okay, so
Buckster.
generally speaking, Bucky is not reactive. And he makes his own gravity because of that, his own personal gravity. People love Bucky. Even when they don't like Bucky, the worst thing they can say about him is, well, he doesn't really talk too much. You know, that's the worst thing that anybody says. I can say some bad things about him because I can actually make Bucky quite reactive. It's a special talent I have. It's a knack, you know. But it's something that I really, really have always admired in him, is that he is very, very, it's not that he can't be reactive, it's that he's not reactive. And his mood is reflective of that. And I really, really value that. You know, like he's not slow, but he analyzes things at a slower pace.
Right. He always thinks things through before he reacts.
Things through. And a lot of times he comes away and people are like, you know, and he fixes things because that's what he is. He's a fixer, he's a doer. And people are like, the guy's a fucking genius. And I can't disagree with them. He is a genius, despite the fact that he was on a chain gang in Florida, despite the fact that he, you know, was his high school, I don't know if he dropped out, but his high school stories are insane. I mean, they're awesome. They put like Dazed and Confused to shame. But
he's kind of what I consider a modern day sage. So when you look at certain people in certain professions, and sometimes in the society, and this is a topic I want to talk about in the future, we look down on people. We go that he's just a janitor, he's just a garbage man, or he's just a this and that.
What a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, well, those people are some of the wisest people in the entire planet. And when you don't listen to that wisdom, you're really losing out. And so Bucky is this gentleman that we know that is a kind of a jack of all trades. He can basically do anything. And when you first meet him and look at him, you don't think that he's very competent or all there, but it's really because he's a quiet sage, because he has a certain wisdom to him, and he has a certain knowledge that he doesn't put out there. He doesn't have an ego like he's going to show everybody. He's going to do his thing, and he's going to project this wisdom, and he does by doing, not by showing or talking.
Yeah, and just to tie it back into to our original thing, he's very non-reactive. He'll take something in, analyze it, and then go about it at the appropriate pace. And I really do value that, and I've tried to take that in myself and learn it. It's been challenging, but I have an example to try and emulate.
Right.
And it's still challenging, but I think going, you know, again, tying back into your point about how you change moods, there are strategies, there are ways to do it. And those are some of them.
Right. And and that was so I said, there's two things. So the first thing was to recognize what you have and what is positive in your life, even though there might be a lot of negative things, you recognize what is positive. And the second thing is a little bit more, is not as tangible. It's a little bit more head in the clouds, which is just kind of be in the moment. Recognize that the universe around you doesn't really give a shit. And for a lot of people, that's not necessarily a good thing. They're like, wait, no one cares? But to me, that is a good thing, because since no one cares, the only person who's looking out for number one is number one. The only thing that's going to change this, the only thing that's going to change your reality is yourself. And so if you live in the moment and you don't think about the past or the future, and you say, okay, what do I need to do next? And then what do I need to do next? And what am I doing right now? Is how you focus on that, as opposed to focusing on past events or far in the future events. And that's a little bit not as easy for everybody, but it's something that's worked for me, that you take it step by step. And if you take things step by step and live in the moment, and then do what you need to do, and go in the next moment and do what you need to do, and you give it 100%, and everything that you do, if you give it 100%, it doesn't matter if you fail, because if you give it 100%, you're going to come out on top. I guarantee you. And so it's like those quiet sage, like it's those modern day sages. You know, Bucky will give things 100%, and he might not always succeed, but I guarantee you that he's gonna be satisfied, you know, that he gave it 100%. And if it doesn't matter what job you have, if you're a you know, the lowliest job or the highest job, even though the highest job, those CEOs, I don't think they give it 100%. But if it doesn't matter what you do, if you give it 100% and you focus on one moment to the next moment, you're going to come out on top. And it might not be what someone else defines as being on top, but I don't care. I'm going to define it as being on top because I define things. It's my reality. I define what it means. I define who I am. And so I'm in charge. I'm in charge, Kyle.
Okay, that's all fine and good. And I'm just going to throw this out there, you know, for all our numbers people in the audience, you know, 100% is nice. That's all fancy and good. You can do really well with 60 or 70 or 80% too, just to let you know.
So that's interesting. That's Kyle's perspective.
You just got to give it the old heave ho. You just got to throw your hat in the ring. Okay. 100% is great. I like that. I'm more of like a C to a B kind of guy. and it's gotten me pretty far too.
And you know, that's it. That's an interesting thing that you say that, because I think that it shows exactly what I'm trying to prove is that, to me, I think about 100% in my own mind, but to Kyle, he can think about 60 to 70% in his own mind, but we're basically at the same point. We're at the same level.
Yeah.
So that's the reality that we create. My reality and Kyle's reality of being on top, of getting through something is essentially the same, but we're using a different number. And so that's what I'm saying, is that the actual number doesn't matter. The actual, you know, external definition of 100 or 0 or whatever, it's not real. It's all created in your mind.
No, so but putting one foot in front of the other is real, though.
Right.
And,
yes.
And that goes to both. That goes to your point precisely.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, okay, let's move on. That
seems good. Good.
Okay, that's it. We did it. There's a lot to talk about there. I just want to move on because
we'd be talking about 100% and putting one foot in front of the other, and Lord, give us the serenity to change the things I can't and do the things I can, and whatever.
And you know, and that's the thing is Kyle, you know, has mentioned it at the last episode about going down the rabbit hole. How deep do you go down the rabbit hole? We don't want to go down the rabbit hole completely, because you can lose all definitions and lose your mind completely. We don't want to lose our mind
into a fucking mine.
Right. And so we can talk forever and we can go down the rabbit hole completely, but it's not constructive. What is constructive is focusing on a few things, talking about something and moving on at this point. If you want to go home and go down the rabbit hole, you know, that's something else. So, okay. So last week, we spoke of civics and nutrition. Kyle brought up a really good topic of civics and nutrition. And just to reiterate for the folks at home, civics is a citizen's rights and duties, or duties and rights as a citizen. And so we spoke of how that's so important right now, so important, the way that our culture is, the way that our society is, that we have these duties and rights as citizens, and we need to execute them, and we need to do our best to educate ourselves on them and educate others and get this in the curriculum, you know, get schools, have better civics in schools and things like that. And teachers try so hard, and I'm so pro teacher that I don't want to tell teacher what to do. I'm talking more about the broader sense. So we spoke of civics, but we ran out of time when it comes to nutrition, but it's related to it. And nutrition is another thing that is so important, but you take it for granted. It seems like such like a simple thing or on the back burner thing, but it's not it. So what's something that almost everyone does every day, multiple times a day, is we eat. We eat almost every day. And I'm going to say almost because I know there's someone who's like, I don't eat every day.
I don't know. I think it's safe to say we eat every day.
Okay, that's a fair thing to say. We eat every day.
And whoever the freak is that doesn't eat every day is, well, God bless him. But
so it's so important, and we take it for granted. And that's something that is so essential to life. And we treat it like this. We treat it like a piece of shit, frankly. We treat it like it's nothing. We treat it like it doesn't have anything to do with anything. And
we
it's
just
the
go
opposite.
through the motions.
Yeah, we go through the motions, and it's the opposite. Nutrition is literally everything to do with everything, because that's where life starts, is water and food. Yeah. So Kyle, tell us about your experience with nutrition.
Well, so just to tie it back again, you know, Tony and I, we like science and we're into science and we read about it, but we're, you know, this isn't any kind of scientific sort of bent that I'm on here, but it's going back to, just to remind folks, it was just a sort of an aha moment that I had, where it was, amongst a million other things, to, you know, combat the travails and the ills of society right now here in 2020. One thing that would help us immensely was, you know, an increase in civic responsibility, civic knowledge, you know, through schools, through parental, you know, parental teachings, community engagement, all that other stuff. And then the other thing, and this is just, I came on these two things. I don't know. I mean, it was an aha moment for me. Somebody could be like, well, those are not that important, but I think they're very important. The other thing is nutrition. Like Tony said, we take it for granted. Okay. So, you know, we all eat every day, and a lot of times it's on the go, it's too fast, you got to cram something in, you get it moving, you buy things from other people, blah, blah, blah. There's a million different ways where we could find places where we could find fault in how we eat. The point that I was thinking about, and going back to my original thought, is that if we were given a deeper body of knowledge, and it was stressed more that nutrition and everything that comes along with nutrition was of the utmost importance, then perhaps we would find ourselves in a society that may be, in a very general way, healthier, not just physically, but mentally as well, because we all know that those things are linked very tightly. Your physical health and your mental health are not exclusive from one another. So in a way, what I'm saying, what I'm positing, is that with a greater understanding of how the body picks up nutrition, where your food comes from, what you're supposed to put in your body, the circumstances that dictate that one person can be very heavy on meat and another person must be heavy on vegetables, you know, and that there's tremendous amount of variance in between. Like, those things could all help us contribute, I think, to a healthier and honestly and more just society. And I don't mean just in the way of like courtroom justice. I mean just in more of like a lofty sort of, like, you know, the like idea of whether or not we should eat. What's that?
Like fair.
Fair, but also, like, I mean, we could go right back to the question of should we eat animals? You know what I mean? Like, is it okay? I'm at the point right now where I would say it is okay to eat animals, but it is not okay to eat animals in the way that we actually eat the animals. You know what I mean? Again, in this,
like factory farms.
Yeah. I mean, other people, there is room for an argument that says no animals should suffer. Part of me wants to, you know, glom onto that. At the same time, I feel like there's room.
At the same time, you like bacon.
I like bacon, but I also understand that, like, you know, I also like history, you know what I mean? And history dictates that humans are omnivores. The point is, though, is that, you know, I'm not saying the food pyramid, it's in and of itself is completely outdated, but that's all we get. I don't know, maybe things have changed. And I mean, I was in a school, I took health class, and I was in a school recently working there, and I think I would have known if there was some real advancements. But generally speaking, you're still dealing with the same old cursory bullshit where it's just like you get this sort of crash course when you're a kid about how you're supposed to eat this much grains and that much milk and that much meat, and then everything's good, and you eat 3 times a day, and that's it. It should go way, way deeper than that. Okay. It should be much more scientific than that. It should also be much more philosophical than that. And one thing, I mean, there's a million examples, but this is crazy. Like so an example for me where we've gone astray, the United States, because the United States, I think we can all agree on this, is quite far astray right now in a lot of different ways. Europe, as far as I know, banned food dyes decades ago. Decades and decades and decades ago, they banned food dyes because they knew that they were bad for young people especially, but people in general. So why have we not banned food dyes?
So just to back that up, my wife is from Europe. I've been to Europe multiple times in the past decade. And when you eat a lot of things, when you eat the meat, when you eat the different animal products, but also different produce and things like that over there, you can taste the difference. I will 100% back that up.
How about in Europe? What about even the process of eating? The way the Europeans eat.
I mean, they have their issues. They're not perfect. They're high in cholesterol, and they do have certainly. I don't want to put Europe on a pedestal,
Tony.
But as far as what you're saying, they're much closer to their food sources, and they do have certain regulations because they're not controlled by these giant multinational corporations like we are in this country that say they can do whatever they want with our food and no one questions it. And in Europe, they do question it. They say, wait a second, this isn't right. And tasting it, it does taste different. I'm sorry, but the food tastes different. If you get like something fresh from a farm here, yes. But I think everyone might have the experience of tasting a fresh farm-raised food compared to a processed food. Well, in the rest of the world, there's not the same type of processing that goes on. It's kind of bad right now in this country.
What I was saying, and of course you're right, they have their issues, they're high in cholesterol and blah, 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 blah. But the point I was making actually was specific, though, the process of eating.
Yeah.
Generally, very generally speaking, but the process of eating, they tend to rush through it less than us.
Right.
You know what I mean? And and let's not even go to right now we're talking about the Europeans. There's a few other continents out there that we could focus on. I mean, it maybe next time we could revisit and see, we'll do a little look and see how the Japanese eat, but when you're over there, or even here, when you're here and you dine with people that have a more grounded, close.
Now who's making noises?
Way. What's that? I heard noises. There's noises. There's dinging.
That was your ding.
I'm dinging.
Fucker.
When you're here and you're eating with people that take a certain level of value in the food that they make, produce, and put on the table, even the process of it takes on a more significant meaning.
Absolutely.
And that can lead to more healthy outcomes. You spend less time, and again, I'm just spitballing here. You spend less time on a device and more time at the table preparing things, making things, and enjoying things. You know what I mean? It's all in an effort to kind of keep us more grounded. A greater knowledge of nutrition would ground us in a way that I feel like we've been untethered. You know what I mean? We've been untethered from reality. And one of the easiest ways to rope us back to the ground is to talk about how important it is to eat and to eat well.
Right. And so with a lot of people,
Yeah.
it's almost like eating is something that you just have to get through. Like, oh, I just have to get through this meal and eat this real quick and be on my way. And in Europe, and for some people, it's more of a longer process and more of an experience. And that experience it brings you closer to your food and closer to where it comes from. And you're absolutely right. So I completely agree with what you're saying, and I have the experience to back that up, that you're absolutely right, that when you take more time to eat and you take more time to prepare the food and be with your family and eat it and have that experience of it, you have the process of knowing where it comes from and preparing it and doing all that kind of thing. So you're so right. But there is an aspect too in our society right now of people that are involuntarily um, unconnected with their food. So are you familiar with what a food desert is? Have you heard this term, a food desert?
Yeah, I have. But go ahead and tell us what it is.
So a food desert is when people in an urban environment are more than, I believe it's either 2 miles or 5 miles. It's 2 miles. Do you know if it's 2 miles or 5 miles? I can't remember. It's a certain amount of miles that they don't have access to fresh produce or fresh food. In other words, if you live in a dense urban environment and the only thing close to you is a quick stop or a gas station or something like that sells only processed food, you are in a food desert. You're not going to be able to get to fresh produce quickly or easily. A lot of people who live in those dense urban environments don't have cars, so they have to go a ways out of their way and take a lot of time just to go and get fresh produce. All they have access to is fast food, or like I said, a gas station. That's the quickest thing that they have, and I don't think that's by accident. And those are in low income urban environments. And the reason that is to keep, or what I'm going to hypothesize is the reason it is to keep people docile. It's to keep people unconnected with their food, with nutritional food that is so baseline. So you keep them out of the baseline, and it's so hard for them to get out of their station. It's so hard for them to get out of that low income, and it's so connected with that. And so I think that's a real travesty in this country right now is what is the food situation in these urban environments, in these food deserts. And it's
I
not
agree.
just this country, it's many countries, but
Yeah,
I know this country, that's why I bring it up.
I agree. I mean, I don't know necessarily that it's like a deliberate like attempt at keeping people down.
I wouldn't say conscious. I would say more like
A collateral damage.
right.
Yeah. No, that I would agree with. And again, this ties back exactly to the idea that these two very broad topics can empower a society that could move not sideways, not backwards, but up and forwards. So if for some reason you gave people this deep and important knowledge that said you should know where your food is coming from, you should feed yourself and your children according to what you determine to be the best plan for you, then people would basically, they wouldn't stand for it. You know what I mean? So people would, instead of there being food, there couldn't be food deserts because there'd be nobody to live there, because they'd say like, okay, well, I mean, granted, not everybody gets the choice of where they get to move. Obviously, you and I are lucky in that respect. But generally speaking, one of the only powers we really, really have left is our powers as consumers, because let's face it, that's all we really are. I mean, we're really just like the way the world is working these days, we're consumers. And that is one of the last bits of leverage we have is the leverage of our wallets. And if people are willing or unwilling to buy from a certain place that doesn't stock what they want and willing to buy from a place that does, because of the knowledge that they have in their brain that was given to them, saying, well, you're poisoning your children if you give them Fruit Loops in the morning, or these giant General Mills, like buy whole grains instead of processed foods. I mean, again, there are simple ways to go about it. There are complex ways to go about it. You can do it. Here we go with the numbers game. You can go 100%. You could probably make some really positive ground by just going 60 or 70% though, and saying, I'm going to change the way I'm eating by halfway or 60%, and I'm going to make a conscientious effort as to not do it. And there are serious, I mean, we gotta break it down. Unfortunately, it's not just the education. Here we go down the rabbit hole. It's not just the education. That's a start, because with an education, and I don't just mean like, oh, you got to go out and get an education. I just mean that it has to be more valued in society. This knowledge has to be
valued and normalized.
Right.
Valued and normalized.
And then after that, then we can have some leverage, because let's face it, the reality is that people will say, oh yeah, Kyle and Tony, that's all and fine and good when you guys get to go to your local market and buy your fucking organic grain-fed fucking meat, blah, 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 blah. But here I am in the South Bronx or in South Philly or in South Boston. They're always south. They're the southern part of the cities. I don't know. Anyway, so South Orlando, whatever the heck it is, and they're like, I have food. My money goes further at Wally World buying shit food, because that's what I can afford is Velveeta Kraft mac and cheese, and that's what I'm doing because I got fucking 5 kids to feed.
Right.
And
well, that's interesting, because I just read this thing in National Geographic. Or not just read it, but there's an article in National Geographic that showed that if the same amount of money that buys a couple fast food meals or a couple quick meals at Wally World or Quickie Mart or whatever, that same money can actually get like a couple raw chickens, raw potatoes, raw onions, raw carrots, and you have a nutritious soup or a nutritious meal that goes way farther.
You can do it.
But those people, but the people don't know necessarily. They're not taught it, or it's not available to them. I'm not blaming it on them. I think that it's not necessarily available, and it's not. I'm gonna rip on the free market. I'm gonna rip on libertarianism here for a minute, because there's this.
Tony.
There's this idea that it's the market that's what they want, and I think that's total and complete bullshit. That's not necessarily what they want. That's the only thing given to them, and that's the only thing available when you're low income and you have very little choices. And when you come from nothing and you don't have anything and you have very little choices, it's extremely difficult to deal with that and to know the right choices.
Right.
So it's not like they're given it's not like the market is there and like, oh, do you want this or do you want the fast food? They only choose the fast food. No, that's bullshit. They don't have access to that healthy food. It's not even there. Yeah. So that's not a free market.
How about instead of making a free market when it comes to money, we make a free market when it comes to like information, education, and enlightenment? How about that? And see what results in that. That makes a whole lot of sense. You're goddamn right, fucking Tony. God damn it. Here I am. I'm gonna curse. I'm all of a sudden I'm cursing a lot. I'm gonna stop.
All right, we're going down the rabbit hole a little too much, but I think.
No. But hold on. You're right, and I'm gonna tie this up in 30 seconds. But you're absolutely right, and it's circling back to the point, which is that my point, which was this aha moment. There are many other ways to get the information. There are other important bits and pieces of information. I'm not downplaying science or mathematics or English or anything else. But when it comes to tangibility and the things that are going to help us change and become a society that we want to be, I think that civics and nutrition, those are huge topics, can really, really make us or give us some solid ground to stand on. And like Tony was saying, you you can't crap on the people that are making those choices. You can only crap on the system that gave them a push towards one direction or another. It's not a free market if one way is easier. There's no freedom if the obvious choice for ease is going this way. So to that end, and again, going back to the point, we really need to focus on those things to make our citizens more aware of the choices that they can make, that they have, that we are allowed to have on, via the letter of the law. We're allowed to have it, but they don't want us to know that. So it's like,
absolutely.
Okay.
Civics and nutrition.
Civics and nutrition, God damn it.
Civics and nutrition. So again, it's, there's this rabbit hole that we can go down. Again, society and our culture and education, it's so interconnected. That's what the show is about. That's what we want. That's what we talk about a little bit, but you can talk about it forever. So we're not going to talk about it forever because we don't have the time.
We're almost done, aren't we?
We're getting close, but we have some time to talk about some more 80s movies wisdom. So we're going to move on. We're going to do Conan the Barbarian one last week. For those of you who have listened to the show and made it this far, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've talked about Conan the Barbarian for a few weeks, and we're going to do it one more time. And then next week, I promise we're going to move on to a different 80s movie. But Conan the Barbarian, one more time, we're going to talk about a little bit about the riddle of steel and about the power of the sword, but also the power of flesh. Kyle, can you tell us a little bit set this up for me?
Sure. So opening scenes, Conan, young Conan, baby boy Conan, sitting with his dad on a mountaintop or something, and his dad is talking, giving him some deep wisdom. And he says, he talks about the riddle of steel, and his version is basically that you must learn. He shows him the sword. He says, you must learn its riddle, Conan. And he says, because there's no one in this world that you can trust, not man, not woman, not beast. And then he holds the sword and he says, this you can trust. And so Conan takes that in. Did you want to say something?
No, I was just doing a sword.
Doing a sword. So Conan takes that in. The movie goes on. He becomes a barbarian, a reaver, slayer, and then he finds himself really in a position of incredible vulnerability. He is captured, a thwarted assassination attempt at his enemy, the Thulsa Doom. He's a demigod played by James Earl Jones. And James Earl Jones knows the riddle of steel. And I can't remember what the segue is, but he says something about the sword, and Conan says, the riddle of steel. He said, yes, you know what it is, don't you, boy? And then he fills him in, and he completely blows his mind, or at least he blows my mind and our mind. We don't know what happens in Arnold Schwarzenegger's mind in 1982, but he says, the riddle of steel is that steel is not strong. Flesh is stronger. And he says to him, I'm almost getting it word for word, steel isn't strong, boy. Flesh is stronger. What good is a sword compared to the hand that wields it? Makes a lot of sense. And then he looks, and then there's like some beautiful women on like a cliff above him in his little garden.
He says, come to me, my child. Come to me.
He says, there, that girl. Come to me, my child. Come. And she just steps off and falls to her death. And then as soon as she lands, she says, that is strength, boy.
That is strength.
That is power.
That is power.
There's some value to that. I mean,
it's a discussion. It's a discussion, and it's an interesting thing because you have people who look at not just steel. I'm going to bring up other things. You have steel, you have guns, you have bullets, you have weapons that are designed to hurt people. But is it those weapons? Obviously, those weapons are a problem. I'm not saying those weapons are a problem. What I'm saying is that as humans, as flesh, we create our reality. Are we the ones that hurt? Our flesh is hurting ourselves. Those weapons can't hurt us any more than our flesh hurts ourselves. I don't know, Kyle.
It's a tough question. I mean, there's a lot of ways to unpack it. It's not an easy one. There are arguments to be heard on both sides. I mean, obviously, I'm just going to go out and speak for you and me both, because I feel like I know you enough to say this, that, if we were to take it over to the gun side, you and I are not advocating for like, oh no, guns aren't dangerous, owners are dangerous. We're not saying that. That's not
right.
what we're saying.
We're not saying that.
We're not saying that. What we're saying is that there is a fair amount of depth in the argument. Especially, forget about the gun thing. because
I think what you're trying to say, we're looking at the big picture. On the small picture, yes, a gun is a dangerous weapon that can kill people. So when people say, oh, it's not, guns don't kill people, people kill people, I disagree with that. Yes, it's the gun that kills. You pull the trigger of a gun, it's the gun that kills people. We're talking about the bigger picture, a broader sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what it really is? It just came to me. I just got it. It's both. It's both. It really is. You know what? I'm going to send you an article that I read that was actually all about the philosophies and the wisdom in Conan the Barbarian. I meant to send it to you earlier today. It's incredible. And they were saying, oh, here's this juxtaposition. His dad is telling him that the sword is strong.
Right.
Thulsa Doom, his sworn enemy, is telling him that the flesh is strong.
Right.
Well, you know what? Just like every other iteration, is it left or right? Sorry, left or right? Or is it somewhere in the middle?
Right.
As hard as it may be, normally, most of the time, it's somewhere in the middle. I mean, here we are again. It's like you got to find that sort of balance. You got to find that path. Is it all the fault of the gun? No. Is it all the fault of the enemy? The human? No. It's the combination of the two.
You're right. I agree with you. But let me just say one thing too.
Talk about rabbit holes.
Holes. No, I agree with you. But at the same time, so let's look at World War I and World War II. So World War I and World War II were one of the most destructive conflicts that humans have had, right? And in World War II specifically, you had this power. You had the Germans who were technologically advanced than other nations. They had the best tanks. They had some of the best guns. They were developing rockets. They were very advanced as far as weaponry goes. But one of the reasons that they ended up losing is because of the sheer volume of people who were fighting against them from the Russian side, from the Soviet Union, and from the Allies. But look at the deaths on the Soviet Union. There were so many people that died in the Soviet Union fighting the Germans because they just kept throwing bodies at them. So the Germans had all these advanced weapons, and the Soviet Union just kept throwing. The Soviet Union, Stalin just kept going, come to me, my children, come to me. And they just kept on going, and they just kept falling on those weapons. And and eventually the Germans got swamped because there were so many people fighting against them. So it's an interesting thing. I'm not necessarily even saying what I mean or proving a point. I'm just saying it's interesting that the most advanced weaponry has been proven in these nasty wars to be swamped by a sheer number of bodies. So it's an interesting thing. And
even going one step beyond that, like even if like an advanced weapon, okay, so we cowed, we put down the Japanese with advanced weaponry, sadly, horribly, the atomics of World War II. is it is at the end of them? No, it's not. It is. I don't even know why I grabbed onto that, but there are. I think that what we're trying to say, or what I'm going to say, is that I'm with Thulsa Doom, even though he was evil, he made a very valid point. It doesn't matter what sort of technology, weaponry, ideology can be used as a weapon. In the end, what really matters is what you can accomplish with a community,
right.
with a group of people.
Right.
And that, like, going in the opposite direction, we're not going to go into this, but like there has been countless episodes in history where a small cadre of believers have taken down a larger oppositional force. I mean, here we are, two men on the internet talking about war and warfare. We're falling right into the same traps. We are not enlightened. God dang it. No, but we are, though, because we're coming to the thought that you can beat it with ideas. You can beat it with community. You can Absolutely. Beat it with togetherness.
So the Japanese are a perfect example. And I'm not Japanese, and I'm not saying I know everything, but the history that I know shows that the Japanese had the atomic bomb drop them on twice. And after that, and the United States took over the country. And then what happened with the Japanese culture is they started kicking ass. They developed so many interesting and new technologies, and they rebuilt so many things on their islands, and they basically progressed in a manner that was so positive, in my opinion. And I've spoken to Japanese people who would agree with me. If there's someone who doesn't agree with me, I'm sure there were negative things. There was some shitty things that happened, but their culture progressed in such a positive way after such a horrible advanced weaponry was used on them. It ties us back to the beginning of the episode where we talked about thinking and creating your own reality. They went through some shitty times, and they moved forward, and they kicked ass, and they continue to kick ass.
And they use the best parts of their culture and their ideologies to do it too.
Right.
Because they didn't so obviously I'm sure, and a Japanese person really could speak more to this, but not everything was lost. Right. They didn't just start over and create a new fabric for themselves. They held on to a lot of what they do well, which is, and again, like Tony, I'm not trying to generalize or belittle, but they're meticulous and they are precise. And those things those qualities have shown themselves in the products that they make.
Right. And we're saying
just watch The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise.
which was talking about the samurai is a different show, and we have the utmost, I can speak for Kyle, we have the utmost respect for the Japanese culture, and we are not Japanese, so there's a lot of things we don't know, but we're saying this from an outsider saying I respect and I admire this. So we're talking about from people that admire. We're yes. Admirers.
Yes.
Yes. We've gone over time a little bit. So we're going to end the show in just a couple moments.
We're such admirers. This was when I hurt myself.
Oh.
This is my they call this kintsugi.
Yes. You break it and put it back together.
Yes. Well,
nice.
it breaks and you put it back together. This is my first attempt at kintsugi.
Nice.
Yeah, turned out pretty good.
It's beautiful. It's for people that aren't looking at the video. It's a bowl that was broken and Kyle put it back together. It's a beautiful bowl, and I appreciate the I appreciate the art of the break.
I had to file down brass bullet casings to get my gold powder. To
Okay.
make them.
It's a little too much information, Kyle, but I appreciate it. Anyway,
No, it's
fine.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
Kyle.
All right. Okay. All right.
Okay, it's okay, Kyle. All right, we've gone over time, but we appreciate if you've made it this far. Thank you for joining us and listening to the Holographic Podcast. And this was the Holographic Podcast. I'm Tony Tone D, and that's Kyle, the Salty Dog, signing off.